well, and also hope that you are having an amazing day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 4 English lesson on letters. So we'll be doing our grade 4 English lesson on letters. So we know basically going to find out what letters are. And we're not talking about letters as in how we spell our names, the letters in our names. We're specifically talking about letters that you write from one person to the other. And remember, with a letter, we have a greeting and we have a closing. So we're doing letters. So our chapter, it's letters. The subject is language arts, which is English. Grade 4. And the lessons that we're going to be focusing on under the chapter of letters is it's greetings and closing of letters. Greetings and closing of letters. So we said our chapter is letters. The subject is English language arts. Grade 4, and the lesson that we're focusing on under the chapter of letters is greetings as well as closing of letters. So a letter, right? When we write a letter, then a letter starts with a greeting. It's the same like if you see someone, the first thing you do is to greet the person that is either standing with you, talking to you, or even walking by. And for each one, right, we're talking about the letters. For each one, we need to capitalize the first word and end it with a comma. And you should also capitalize proper nouns such as and, so. And an example of greeting, right? So in a letter, right, we need to greet. It's like we were saying, if somebody walks to you, walks up to you, or passes you, right, then we greet. So we see that a letter starts with a greeting and it ends with a closing. And for each one, we capitalize the first word as well as we end the last one. And we should also capitalize proper nouns such as and, stew. And an example, right, of a greeting where we greet somebody with a letter is, for example, where we can write the letter to Auntie Sue. Then we say, Dear Aunt Sue. So we start our greeting by saying, Dear Aunt Sue, or depending on who you are greeting. All right, so we see that with letters we have a opening, so we are greeting, and then we also have a closing. All right. So when it comes to letters, right? Letters can be either a written type or a printed way of communication. So we said letters, it is either written or it is typed or it is a printed communication sent in an envelope by post or messenger. And if we look at an example, right? He sent a letter to Mrs. Falconer. All right. So we're going to the first lesson, which is greetings and closing of letters. All right, so we said that when it comes to a letter, right, a letter, it starts with a greeting. Same like even if you're on the phone, the first thing we do is we greet. If you see somebody, you greet. So the same with letters, right? So a letter, it starts with a greeting and it ends or it closes also. So letter starts with a greeting and it ends also with a closing. And we need to capitalize the first word and the end word with a copy. All right. So if we look at these two clothings, right? Which one do you think is correct? And remember keeping in mind, right, all the requirements that is told to start something. I remember when we write a letter, and not forgetting that letters, the first word of the letter starts with capital letter. You need to capitalize it. So we capitalize proper nouns. For example, like Aunt Sue. So we need to say which one is a correct closing. Which closing is correct? So we need to say which one is correct. The closing. Do we just say thanks, comma, Tammy? So thanks, Tammy is correct. But now if we look at the correct greeting, like the greeting when you start, So which greeting do you think is correct? And if we choose a greeting, right, that we think might be correct, then we can even just say, oopsie. Then we can even just say, for example, dear, dear, and the person's name. That is now how we start with a greeting. So when we're greeting, we, for example, say thanks and the person's name or the person's surname, depending on how you greet that specific person. And when we close, you can either say thanks, you can say regards, you can say kind regards, and the person's name, or the person's name and surname, or just the person's initial and surname. That is when we close off. All right, so now it says, which closing is correct? Which closing is correct? They're only giving us one. They're only giving us one, and they're saying it's like, for example, your student, Clara. Which means that Clara is a student who maybe either wrote to a supervisor or wrote to the lecturer. So we're basically closing off our letter with your student. And like I say, your student gives us indication that this is a student at either university, college, or school, which is either writing a letter to the teacher or guardian or supervisor. All right, let us go to our test on aplusstudents.ca. We need to say which closing is correct. Remember keeping in mind how we punctuated capital letters, for example, commas, endpoint, and so on. So which closing is correct? Is it the first option, which is your student, Clara, or the second option, your student, Clara? And like I said, keeping in mind if whoever needs to be closed, for example, whoever, if it needs to be lower cases, what needs to be. And if we choose the correct closing, right, we will go with the second option, because your is correct with the capital letter Y, but student should be with a lower case. So your student, Clara. So it's lower cases. Only the first word or letter needs to be capitalized. And the first option is correct. So well done. And it is correct. Which greeting is correct? Do we say dear Dr. Lin, which is the first option, or dear Dr. Lin, which is the second option? And if we look at the correct greeting, right, we will say it's the second option. Because if we look at the title, which is doctor, doctor's title needs to be capitalized. We need to say which greeting is correct. So we said it's a second option. And the second option is correct. So well done. Second option is correct. Now we need to say which greeting is correct. Is it dear Grandma Jill or dear Grandma Jill? And we said that it is second option. Look at the word Jill. Jill is the name of a person. Remember, names of people, titles, places needs to be capitalized. All right, so we can go to the first one. So, dear Grandma Jill. Remember, the name Jill needs to be capitalized. And that one is correct because we said we capitalized Jill, right? The name of someone. So which greeting is correct? Dear Dr. Franklin, which is the first option, or the second option, which is dear Dr. Franklin, with the lower cases. So is it the first option or the second option? All right, so we will then say it is the first option because the title is capitalized, the name or surname is capitalized, as well as the start of the greeting, which is dear. We need to say which closing is correct. Closing, how you end of something, in the letter, in the conversation. So which closing is correct? Option one, which is love Alex, or option two, capital letter love, Alex? Remember, our greeting needs to start with a capital letter. So which closing is correct? And we said it's the second one. Specifically the second one because the first letter of that word needs to start with a capital letter. So love and then Alex. And the second option is correct. Now, which closing is correct? Is it option one, which is your student polo, or option two, just your student polo? And if we look at the which closing is correct, then we will say it's the second one. The reason why we say it's the second one is because it starts with a capital letter, but thereafter it moves on to lower cases. So if we choose the closing, then we're going to choose the second option. And that is correct. So well done. So which closing is correct? So we can say, is it the first option, which is see you soon, Eva, or the second option, where we have a capital letter S for see you soon, Eva? So if we choose the correct closing, we will choose the second option. See you soon, Eva. We need to find the correct closing. Or which one? Is it the first one, which is thanks, Tammy, or the second one? Capital letter thanks, Tammy. And if we choose the correct word, the correct one to show the closing, right? And then we will say it's the second option, which is capital letter T for thanks and Tammy. And now we're going to do the last one. So well done. That one is correct. Well done. The last one says, which closing is correct? Is it lowercases, which is yours truly, Warren, or capital letter yours truly, Warren? So which closing is correct? And if we choose the one that is correct, then we'll go with the second option, which is capital letter Y for yours truly, and then Warren. So great job. Well done. So we said a letter, it starts with a greeting and it ends with closing, right? It's the same as like me starting the lesson. I first greet, right? And then when I'm done with the lesson, I close by also greeting. But the greetings of how you start and how you end or how you close is totally different. And remember, for each one, which is for greeting as well as for closing, we need to capitalize the first word and the end word with a comma. So we capitalize the first word and end word with a comma. And remember, when it comes to proper nouns, right? Proper nouns, it needs to be capitalized because proper nouns are names of people, names of places, right? Like a specific name of people, places, and so on. Days of the week, months of the year, that is what we capitalize. So basically, like onto Sue, on Sue, then definitely that is what we capitalize because it is also a proper noun. It is a name of someone. And remember, we are specifically talking about letters, right? And whenever you write a letter, you need to greet, whether it is a formal letter or whether it is an informal letter. With formal letters, we start with dear, somebody's name, dear Jack, dear Sarah, depending. That is when it's a formal letter. When it's informal letter, you can either say dear if you want to, or you can just start with hello, or you can start with hi, but there needs to be a form of greeting because that will be your opening or your starting, right? So we greet. And when we write letters, right, we greet and then you write what the letter is about, or let's say the reason for writing the letter. It's either you want to invite them to the birthday party, or the reason for writing your letter could be because you want them to come and visit for the holidays, or you can maybe write a letter to maybe say, like maybe tell them about something that happened in your life, happened at home. Maybe you got a new pet. But when you write a letter, it is usually you telling somebody reasons as to why you're writing. For example, if we look at this letter over here, Dear Auntie Sue, so that is our greeting. So that is the greeting. So which means that they are writing to Auntie Sue. I'm glad you could come to my party and thank you for the birthday gift. I could not have asked for a better one. Every time I see it, I think of you. Which means that this is now after the party, after Sue was at the party. So the reason for this letter is this person thanking Auntie Sue for firstly attending the party, and secondly, the motive or the reason of this letter is also thanking Auntie Sue for the birthday gift and how grateful the person is. And even the exclamation within, because sometimes even punctuations within a letter, it states either excitement or it's you asking questions within your letter, or it's sometimes demanding, depending. And then of course when you end your letter, we need to close the letter. And we close off the letter by either saying sincerely and your name. For example, let's say my name. Or sometimes, if, for example, this is Auntie Sue's niece, you can maybe say your niece and you write your name. I'm just going to give, let's say, Sheba, right? But you need to close off your letter. We start with a capital letter. We also put a comma before you put your name or you state your name. So now Aunt Sue, sorry, will basically know who is writing the letter. Even though in the letter will basically Aunt Sue will get an idea as to who is writing the letter. But just for safety's sake, you also need to write closing is by writing your name as to giving the person, the reader, an idea of who is writing the letter. There is also one way in which we can close with love. That is if you're writing either to your aunt, to your friends. Sincerely is mainly when we are writing more of a formal letter. If you're writing to the doctor, writing to the teacher, the principal, then we put words like your sincerely or yours sincerely or sincerely yours. But if we're writing an informal letter, either writing to a family member, writing to a friend, right, then we can just, for example, use words like with love, your niece, your friend, your best friend, and the name. All right, so that is our lesson on greeting and closing of letters, right? We said when it comes to greeting and closing of letters, we say that a letter starts with a greeting. It's like greeting the person that you're writing the letter to. And it ends with a closing, right? So after you have written as to stated who is writing the letter or who you're writing to, and then you need to basically we close our letter. So we have our opening, which is our greeting, the reason as to why we're writing the letter, and our closing. Closing can be with love, sincerely, your cousin, your niece, your best friend, and your name, not forgetting the comma. All right, so that is now the end of our lesson on letters. Thank you very much, grade fours, for joining the class. And thank you to those who were interacting. I really hope that you do have a broad understanding of letters and greeting and closing of letters. All right, so that is it for today. Have a good weekend further. Goodbye.